our session off with a story, fairly quick story, but a story that we'll use throughout our time together. So, in the early 2000s, I actually worked for a healthcare consulting firm. And my responsibility was to actually travel to hospitals, 120 hospitals every year. And in doing so, I would go and I worked with clinicians and physicians on challenging issues such as nurse retention or physician clinician dynamics, team effectiveness. And I was responsible for pulling from our inventory of best practices solutions that were going to help solve their problems. Well, if you can imagine, as I said, I delivered 120 presentations to hospitals across North America. And I would leave my home on Mondays and return on Fridays. And so I lived out of my suitcase, and all of my meals pretty much came from the restaurant. While I absolutely loved what I did, what I quickly realized after 2 years was that it wasn't sustainable. And despite all my efforts to try to change my travel load, I wasn't able to. And after a health scare, I made a decision that I needed to make a change for myself. Well, I was able to find a new role where I worked in the learning and development space. And what I know about myself is that I'm passionate about helping people to develop. And so one of my first tasks in this new place of employment was to complete a fairly exhaustive needs assessment that I would be using to help to develop the HR professionals so they could serve their internal clients. And, as I began settling in, I actually moved to a new city within the States. And one of the things that I had just really kind of lost was my love of cooking, because I was in restaurants every single day, Monday through Saturdays, and usually maybe would have a home cooked meal on Sunday. So, needless to say, I start this new job. I'm excited, and I actually decided, I'm going to start baking some things on the weekend. And when I go into the office, I'll take something into the office. This is my way of really kind of sharing kind of my love of cooking with the people now that I'm working with. And, things were going quite well for some time. I felt like the people appreciated what I was doing, and I wasn't doing it really for, them giving me praise around cooking, but instead it was a way to connect with people. As things progress, I'm about 2 months into this new role, and I'm about to actually give a presentation to the leadership team. And I started hearing people say different things to me. I heard one person say to me, I saw you walking across the parking lot this morning, and I realized that you had a cake with you. I'm going to be in a meeting this morning, so do you think you could leave a slice of your cake on my desk for me? I had someone else say, next week is my birthday, and I really would love it if you made XYZ. I can't remember what kind of cake they wanted me to make, but you would make me this particular cake. And yet another person said to me, I love your cakes. And what I would actually prefer is if you could put a schedule together of the cakes that you're going to make, and I'll know when you're making them. And this way I'll know what to bring for lunch. As you can imagine, I'm now being overwhelmed by the fact that I had something that I was passionate about, that I'm going to talk a little bit later about my history with food, that now has been transformed into this mandate, and needless to say, it was something I was doing on a volunteer basis. Well, let's get back to my needs assessment. So I have completed my needs assessment. I'm now with the leadership team, and I'm ready to share my findings. And I share my findings, and one of the leaders, actually the top person, on this HR team came to me and said, wow, Shelley, this report and findings was very exhaustive, very comprehensive. I love that you had quantitative and qualitative data here. And it kind of surprised me because really I only knew you as the cake lady. And so this is where I'm going to kind of end this story, because what I realized at that point was I had created an identity or an image that was around me being a cake lady versus me being this person who was able to deliver learning and development solutions for HR professionals. So what I want to say is we have to be intentional about the type of identity or images that we're creating consciously or unconsciously. And so what we're going to do here in a moment is we're going to really look at our own stories, and you're going to substitute whatever mine was the cake lady, whatever you're known for that you may need to do more of or less of. We're going to give you an opportunity to be able to do that. So during this time, you'll have that opportunity to gain greater self-awareness about how you lead and how others, again, might perceive you. We're going to explore various elements that make up our personal identity, like our collection of attributes, our beliefs, our values, our motives, our experiences. And then at the end, we're going to actually brainstorm some personal strategies in order to bring our intent in alignment with our impact. And you'll have an opportunity through the use of the breakout sessions to share those stories and come up with strategies with someone else. So let's dive into personal identity as a leader. So some of you may be familiar with the Jhari Window. It's been around for a very long time, so let this serve just as a reminder for those that are already familiar with it. I share this because it holds such great value and insights into how we manage the information that we share with others. So for those of you not familiar with Jhari Window, simply put, it's about the information that you know about yourself and the information that others know about you. And where we tend to live is in this space we call the arena. It's what we know about ourselves and what others know about us. But then there's this other window of information, if you will. This is information that you know about yourself that others don't know. There's information that others know about you that you don't know that clearly could be a blind spot for you. And then there's information that you don't know about yourself and others don't know about you. And the best example I can give of this is the fact that I learned through experience that I have a fear of falling. I don't have a fear of heights, but I do have a fear of falling. And I learned that by being in Costa Rica, walking across hanging bridges, driving up really steep mountains that didn't have railings, and I had a panic attack. But these are the kinds of things you learn because you do something or you have an experience with it. And so what we want to invite you to do really is about finding ways to expand your arena. And you do that, one, through self-disclosure. So some of the things that are private to you, you then make known to other people. And then another way you can expand it. I'm sorry, there's someone that needs to be muted. Another way that you can expand it is through feedback. So sometimes people will see things in you that you don't know, and they'll share it with you. And this is where really we want you to be open to that kind of feedback so that your arena is in fact expanded. And what we also know is that when we permit that to happen, we expose ourselves, we're more vulnerable, as well as receiving the feedback from other people, that in fact we get to this place of discovery where we're learning things about ourselves that others then can learn about us as well. So I wanted you to just be again reminded about this. What's nice is that the conference has actually provided you with opportunities throughout breakout sessions to do that very thing, to expand your arena, to share maybe some things that have been private, as well as to be open to feedback. In addition, you'll also have some opportunities to join networking sessions so that you can further the self-disclosure, receiving of feedback, as well as learning more about yourself. So as a part of the discovery process, what I want to invite you to do in this session is to turn the mirror inward so you can see who you are and who you have become. So in doing so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our event producer actually to launch a poll. And I'm curious to know the answer to this question. Do you see yourself as a leader? So if you could run the poll for us, I'd love to be able to see what people are thinking. Do you see yourself as a poll? And so the answers are going to be yes, no, or you're not certain. So Telenon, are you able to run the poll? So if you wouldn't mind, you all should be able to see the poll now. And I'm seeing the results come in. Actually, I'll put the poll over here on my screen. Okay, we have, okay, so 100% have answered. So it's interesting. I'm delighted to see that 83% of you do see yourself as leaders. And it's honestly a challenge that many times women face where we don't believe we're leaders. But I do want to speak to this kind of 17% of you, quite a significant number, 15%, that you're just not sure. And yet there are a few that actually, in fact, don't believe that you are leaders. So let's dive into this whole idea around leadership, okay? So what we know is CCL as the Center for Creative Leadership has been in the business of leadership development and research for some 50 years. And what we do know is when we think about leadership, we see leadership as a social process. And that means that regardless of whether or not you're the top part in a hierarchical kind of structure, that you have a role to play and that you are a leader. You're a leader even if it means that you're in agreement and you're following the path of the direction that the organization or the project or whatever it is you're working on, that you come to the table, that you bring your best self, you do your part, you're in line with the vision and the goal, and that you show commitment. That's leadership. So it's a social process. It's not just someone who's on the top. So because of that, we're all leaders. There's been quite a few other studies out there, and there's one that you see here that comes from a Harvard Business Review article entitled Women Rising, the Unseen Barrier. And they write that people become leaders by internalizing a leadership identity and by developing a sense of purpose. And what's interesting here is that women, we tend to be challenged with integrating leadership into our core identity. And that's because we often have to work really hard to establish credibility. It's sometimes because we operate in cultures that's in conflict with our ability to be able to exercise authority. So no wonder we're not certain, or we just don't think, in fact, that we are leaders. But the reality is that our identity is tied to our sense of purpose. And so an elevated sense of purpose really challenges us to move outside of our comfort zone, and it helps us to face our fears and to take action. And we're most effective when purpose becomes aligned with our values and they're oriented towards advancing kind of this collective good. And so as you see here, our identity, as I mentioned earlier, it's really made up of those collection of attributes, our beliefs, our values. But not only that, when we pull all those things together towards a collective good, then we're able to be experienced by others as being authentic. And so as we focus on clarifying our identity, our purpose or brand as leader, the hope here is that you're going to use this opportunity to get outside of your comfort zone, to take action. And we really do see this as a lifelong process. You know, too often we're faced with, as you see on the screen, this idea of this authenticity paradox. And this is where we experience this trade-off between we have in our mind, you know, I've got to do what it takes to be effective in the moment. And we're balancing that with being able to stick to who we are, our true selves. If I go back to my story, my initial story, you know, what I would say is I knew working in that organization, doing this needs assessment, showing up, doing what it took to be a leader, that I could not really be my authentic self in sharing my baked goods because my identity as a cake lady was transposed. And so it's this tension that we deal with. And this is sometimes where we have to then think about the images that we're portraying or the things that are core to who we are. And maybe there's another more appropriate way of being able to share something that's really true about our identity and true to who we are. So I tell you what I did in this situation, going back to my story, is that I stopped baking that day that the leader said, I only knew you as a cake lady. That ended because I needed to modify the image that I was portraying. But what I did instead, remaining true to myself, is that I actually adopted a fire station that was not very far from my home, where I was able to then bake them all kinds of wonderful things. They appreciated it, and there was no confusion about who I was as a leader and the fact that I had this passion and this love around cooking and baking. And this is where I'm saying we've got to sometimes manage the image that in fact we have. And so other things like how can we both be personable and vulnerable, you know, yet we are, you know, assertive at accomplishing something. How can we be caring yet also confident? And at the same time, not feeling like we have to emulate this image of being a man in order to be leader-like. So this is an ongoing challenge that we're faced with, and we have to come to a place of being able to be who we are and to lead authentically. And so let's talk a little bit about this personal identity and who we've become. So in the chat, and I'm hoping that Telenin has put this in the chat, what you're going to find is a link to this personal identity map. And so I want you right now to click on the link and download it. And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds in order to do that. And while that's happening, I'm going to actually walk you through it, and I'm going to give you some time to actually complete it. Okay, so let's see if that's been put in the chat for you. Okay, Catherine says it's not working for her. What I will do is, Catherine, I will read off some of the items, and we'll see about maybe Teledine, you can make a note next to Catherine's name, and we can find another way to get it to her after the session. So again, I want you to download it. I'm going to give you again another second to do that. This is also an electronically fillable document, so you'll actually be able to type in the document. So I'm going to assume that most of you have opened it up by now. And so, Catherine, what you might want to do is just get a piece of paper and a pen, and I'm going to write down some of the categories. And for others of you that may have a challenge in downloading it, you can just write down these categories. And then I'm just going to ask you to pick 2 or 3 of them in order to answer. So on this identity map, what it says is identify the core aspects of your identity. And I'm going to preface this. I'm going to say also those things that have impacted you to be the leader that you are today. And so some of the categories are education, family background, your beliefs, sources of inspiration, your loves or passion, your energy source, genetics, life events, your strengths, and your quirks. So I'll read those again. Your education, your family background, your beliefs, your source of inspiration, your loves or passion, your energy source, your genetics, life events, strengths, and quirks. So if I go back to my story, let me give you a little bit of background in terms of my family background. Growing up, the way I bonded mostly with my dad was through food. My dad was a chef, and that's how we spent most of our time together. My mom worked during the day, and my dad worked at night. And so when he was there with us during the day and the weekends, he would teach me to cook. He taught me to have a real passion for cooking, and cooking became this big thing in our family. When I think about my loves or my energy sources, it really does come down to developing people, helping people to be the very best that they can be. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes in order to do this, I'm going to ask you to think about what are 2 or 3 of these categories. And if you think back like I did of some things that make up really kind of who I am and who I've become as a leader, jot that down, okay? And most of you are already off video. If you're on video, you can go off video. And I'm going to just put up a timer for 5 minutes, and we'll come back 5 minutes, and I'll give you further instructions. Okay. So take 5 minutes to fill out as many of those as you can. Try to be specific about things that help you with your identity. Birth order is another good one. So maybe think about birth order as well. have about another 3 minutes. So take about another minute. You have an opportunity, obviously, we want you to download this because we know you're not going to have time to complete the document in its entirety, but this will be a good takeaway for you. All right. All right, so if I could get you to come back and join me, what I want to do now is we're going to put you in breakout rooms, hopefully groups of 3s or maybe 2s. And this is what I want you to do. Remember I talked about that arena, expanding the arena by sharing maybe some things that others might not know that maybe you considered private, as well as gaining feedback. What I want you to do is answer these 2 questions. So I'd like everyone, the 3 of you, if it's 3 or 2, to each person talk about the characteristics on your map that are most important to how you lead. So you each will do that. And then what I want you to do collectively is come up with at least one way that you can increase your sense of authenticity in your leadership role. And when you come back to the plenary with everyone, I want you to be able to share at least one. So if you come up with a couple, that's fantastic. But I want you to be able to share at least one. So with that, Talina, can you put the group in their breakouts? And you're going to have 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll debrief. So you might see a notice to join, so just click on it and you'll be placed in your room for 15 minutes.
Thanks, Shelley. I think it's going well.
Okay, awesome. And Ashley, you sent me a note that I had 15 minutes. I thought at the time I still had about 25 minutes. So I wasn't sure about that.
Yes, I believe the session does end at 8:10 a.m. ET, but
Okay.
it's okay if we do go on a little longer because the next panel doesn't start until 8:25. It's just that there were
Okay.
some like networking groups that people can join, but I think it's okay if we hit the 8:24 mark.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll make the when we come back, I'll really kind of bring a close to it. I'll ask them to put it in the chat. I won't do a discussion. And so you wanted me to end originally right at 8 o'clock, right?
8:10.
8:10. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
but I think um you
The
could do a closing to meet that mark, but if you did want to open up to the large group and go until closer to like 8:20 or 8:25, I think that should be all right too. And people can just drop off if they really want to go to the networking tables. Um,
okay.
but if there are some people that stay on, which I'm sure some will, that should be fine as long as we do close by 8:25 because that's when the
Okay.
next official event takes
Okay,
place.
so what I'll do is let's pull them out at 8:10, and then I can do a 5 minute close. That gets us at 8:15. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And you can direct them to the networking groups.
Yes. Okay. I can see what I did when I did my notes to myself on my timing. Um, Instead of putting 45 minutes, I actually put 60 minutes. So that's what threw me with the 15
No,
minutes,
that's
but I
totally
see
understandable.
I totally see what I did here. Okay.
No, 60 minutes
So
would be very standard. It is 45 is a very short amount of time to run a workshop.
yeah. Okay. So Talina, what we'll do is at 8:10, we will pull them out. So maybe you can give them a warning, a 5 minute warning at 8:05, and then maybe a minute warning at 8:09. Are you able to do that? Maybe just broadcast. I'm not sure if you can hear me, Talina. Okay. Well, I will do a broadcast at 8:05 and just tell them they have 5 minutes.
Meanwhile, Miriam, to get ready for your session, I think they want us in that Zoom room 15 minutes early, which would mean leaving at 8:10.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for the reminder. I knew, but thank you
Yeah.
so much. I appreciate the follow-up.
Yeah.
Attention to
Well,
detail.
so we'll head out then.
Yep.
Telenum, are you with us? Telenum, are you with us? I just saw you signed on with a different account. Hello. Shelley had a request about broadcasting a message. Did you get that request?
If not, I actually have it set up. So I can just, in 2 more minutes, I'll just send the broadcast. Since I'm co-host, I can do it as well.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so Telenon Zoom is having issues.
It looks like we have a new backup tech moderator with us. I think we don't have any more tech notes, right, for the rest of the session, other than we're just, I think the breakout rooms are already set to end at 8:10 anyways. And that's when Shelley wants to pull them back.
Yeah, and I would say I'm going to broadcast that they have 5 minutes. I'm going to do it right now. And yes, if you would do a hard close at 8:10.
Hard close. So none of the like 30 seconds left in the breakout room.
Well, is she, can you do that? Can you do the 30 seconds? I'm wondering if the technical moderator could come on screen. Okay, so close the, can you do a 30-second so we want the rooms closed right at 8:10. Can you do 30 seconds before then?
It would depend. So Telenom has the breakout room settings as the person who created the breakout rooms. I am able to close them as a default co-host, but I believe Telenom would either need to change those settings or leave the Zoom meeting in order for me to have those have the capacity to change the settings.
Okay, so what I'll do is I will just do I'll do a 30-second, and I'll just do a minute. I'll do a minute, and then right at 10 after the hour, just close it with no delays, okay?
Okay.
So I'll just let them know. I'll just say you have 1 minute remaining. And I'll put that up, and then right at 8:10 you can just close it, okay?
Okay, that I will check with Telenom to make sure that the settings are currently set to close automatically. It could be that there is, I think the default is a minute long.
Oh, it is.
Before closing, but I will check to make sure with Telenom via Slack.
Okay, yeah, if you could find that out, then I don't want to give them an extra 2 minutes, so.
Telenom, I got a message from you saying that the connectivity issues are resolved. Are you able to unmute and share the settings?
Okay, so it's set to a minute. Okay, so I don't have to do the broadcast. And okay, so I guess then at 8:09, then close it at 9 after, because then it'll give them the 1 minute. Is that right?
Yes.
So 1 more minute, and then we'll bring them back. Okay, so I'm assuming that it closed, right? Because it's 8:09.
Yes, they're now set to close in 55 seconds.
Wonderful.
Great. And will one of you give Shelley the green light once everyone is officially back?
Yes, can do.
Okay, I know people are making their way back. All right. So for those of you that have returned back to the room, would one of you from your group put in the chat one way in which you're going to increase your authentic self in your leadership role? So one person from your group, just one thing that you said you're going to do to increase your authentic self. And then I'll just read them out as they start coming in. And as we're doing that, remember, I realized that you weren't going to have enough time. I usually, in normal circumstances, give at least 30 minutes to complete out that map. And so be sure to take some time. This is your takeaway. Be sure to take some time and complete the map. This is about self-awareness, knowing more about yourself. It's about living your authentic self, right? And that's so incredibly important for us as women leaders, especially since we're often challenged by just having a seat at the table or being a voice in the room. So again, if you put one of the things in the chat. So far, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So if you could, okay, now I'm seeing them. All right. That here's one. You don't have to say yes to every opportunity. You have to just weigh them out. I love that. Be consistent with your words and actions. Ask for help and get the job done right. Another one, actually reach out to like-minded women like here for feedback, solidarity, and get that reality check. I love this one. Angela said, fight for my education in gender and development studies in order to continue working, empowering women and girls in our community. Jordan, Carmen, and Kate, being authentic through self-awareness and using that as a positive approach to connect with our team versus imposter syndrome, which we do face with, right? Christy Marie, looking at different perspectives and feelings of those we lead. Consider this is an important quality in authentic leadership. Do the right thing again and again and again, says Demarius. Always ensure your voice is hard to bring change, and encourage work-life social balance for men, women, students, and volunteer their time and knowledge. Great ways to think about bringing your authentic self. So I want to just leave you with one quote that I would say fits into much of what many of you actually shared, and that is this. It comes from Michael Holland. Says, authentic leadership is revealed in the alignment of what you think, what you say, and what you do. So we want to make sure we do that. So I want to thank you for joining us today as you continue the journey for knowing who you are and being your authentic self as a leader. You can now navigate back to the agenda page where you'll have an opportunity to RSVP for either the networking rooms or watch an award-winning poet perform, which will happen simultaneously. So thank you so much for joining. And we really appreciate having you all here and hope that you found this session to be helpful. Bye-bye.